You're watching White Mountains TV. I'm Chris Prue, and joining me in the White Mountains TV studios in North Conway Village right now is our very special friend Clare Long from the White Mountain National Forest. Thanks for joining us, Clare.
Good morning, Chris.
And today we're talking about the changing seasons. Some of the changes out there are obvious to the naked eye. Some of them we don't see at all. But even the ones we see that seem obvious, we may not actually be aware of what's happening in the background. You're about to fill us in.
I am. All these parts and pieces that your body, as well as the forest, gives you a clue that changes are happening.
Now let's start with the obvious. It's fall. We don't need, we obviously know that the colors are changing. We can tell by the tour buses dropping everybody off up here. Oranges, reds. It's absolutely beautiful. What is going on in our forest?
So this is autumn, and this autumn is actually an Etruscan word meaning the passing of the season.
An Etruscan word?
Etruscan, yeah, long ago. And so basically what we're seeing is the passing of the season. And like that famous Birds song, the Birds BYRDS, turn,
Yeah.
things are turning. You know the song, right?
I do. So
what shall we sing?
No, I don't know about that. we want an audience for this interview.
We like an audience.
But so obviously there are different colors. We see oranges, we see yellows, we see reds. Why is this change happening? How is it happening?
Great. So what's going on, and we're feeling it too, is there's a change in the angle of the light. It's called photoperiodism. And what that means is that angle of the light coming in is impacting the light that's affecting the trees or the animals or even the lakes or the water bodies there. And so what the trees are realizing is, whoa, seasons are changing. They're going to stop photosynthesizing. Yep. And when they stop photosynthesizing, they put in something called an abscission layer. And what that does between the leaf, the stem of the leaf, and the twig, it's called an abscission layer. It's a kind of a corky layer. And what happens is the tree will then start making these little bumps, they're little nodules, and instead of the leaves falling off, they kind of get pushed off by the tree, because these leaves are giant photosynthesis factories, but they also use a lot of water. And if you kept these leaves all winter long, what happens in the winter to water?
It freezes.
And if you're a big fat leaf, you don't want to freeze because you want to be able to do that.
Right.
So the colors that you're seeing in some of these leaves, some of them are always there. So like the yellow, which is called xanthophyll, that's already in the leaf. And this chlorophyll, which is a green color, is always there.
Okay.
When it starts to go to fall, with the changes in the photoperiodism, the light, the changes in the temperature, and then just the chemistry inside the leaf that's going on there, what'll happen is it'll start to create it won't create as much chlorophyll, and then these colors, which are already inside the xanthophyll, which is yellow, and the beta carotene, which is orange, like carrots. Yeah, you got there. They're already in there. So what'll happen is they kind of pop out once the green are gone.
So it's almost like we have a short window in the fall where we're seeing the true nature of each of these trees.
Right, exactly. Now the red is called anthocyanin, and that's actually sugars that are left over. They get trapped in the leaf, kind of a little like this right here. They get trapped in the leaf, and the sugars stay in there, create this beautiful, these red and purpley colors. We get that in blueberries too, as well, and some of these other cherries and things, that red color. It's all the sugars that are in there that are creating that color. So that's the red. So yellow is xanthophyll, orange is beta carotene, and the red is anthocyanin.
And this whole process is triggered by the shortening days, by the angle of the light. Does temperature have any factor on this?
Actually, it does, because what'll happen is these nice, cool nights, the trees will start to react to this. The leaves will stop photosynthesizing because there's not as much light, and if it's cooler, the trees are actually realizing that there's a change in what's happening with the moisture levels, and they want to be able to get rid of these leaves, these big fat photosynthesizing factories, before the change happens and it starts to impact the tree.
Right.
So this abscission layer actually pushes the leaf off and then creates a layer on the tree branch or on the little stem there, so no bacteria or anything can get into the tree. So it's kind of a protection of the tree.
Right.
Now evergreen trees don't do this. evergreen keep their leaves.
And we think of them as being evergreen and not changing, but they're actually going through changes as well, right?
Exactly, exactly. And what they have is they put in something, it's kind of like an antifreeze. It's an ethylene. And sometimes when you're going through the forest, especially in the fall or in the spring, when you're like, oh, I'm smelling those pine trees. That's awesome. That's basically ethylene.
When it
It's
smells
an
like Christmas?
antifreeze. Right, exactly. That's antifreeze. A little like what you put in your car, but not really.
Yeah.
And so what the tree will do is put it into those long, skinny needles. There's a couple of other adaptations, because with the deciduous trees, meaning leaf falling off or falling off, nice big flat one, where with the evergreen, they're long, skinny needles, but they have a larger area, but it's just not as large and flat all in one area. And then they have this waxy coating on the outside called cutin. And what that does is it prevents the loss of water, because that's the big thing. Up here in the winter and at the end of the fall, it's really dry. It's like a desert out in the forest area there, even though they still have lots of trees.
One of the things I notice in fall is a change in the odor sometimes as you're walking through the forest.
Yes.
And there's a big backstory to that.
Yes, there is, and it's fascinating. There's a word for it. It's called petrichor.
Petrichor.
Petrichor, and it's called the smell of the earth. And what's happening is there's bacteria called actinomycetes that are inside of the soil and around the edges of the rocks and things. And when they dry out, and then when you get just a little bit of a moisture, it's released. This geosmin, it's called, is released up in the air. And then inside your face, you have this thing called the trigeminal nerve. It's like right back in here. You can't really kind of say, oh, I hurt my trigeminal nerve. But actually, this is the one that when you eat ice cream and you're just like, oh, brain freeze, that's the nerve. That's the nerve there. And what happens is this geosmin it triggers your trigeminal nerve up in your brain to start remembering this left over from our past, when we had to spend a lot more time paying attention to the seasons.
Right.
So inside it's saying to our very reptilian brain, time to start bringing in the food, put
Bulking
on the
up,
weight,
yeah.
Prepare for the changes in the season.
The hard winter's coming.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Get it while you can.
Exactly.
It's amazing how our bodies are even interacting with the seasons, even beyond our conscious, knowledge.
Right. Well, in the winter, seasonally affective disorder, SAD or something. So what's happening is there are some people who are experiencing, oh, it's coming, a little more stress about the seasons. Don't stress. It's all very, very, very,
There's nothing you can do
cool.
about it. Don't stress.
But what's interesting also is there are some people, the trees, the deciduous ones right now, are giving off something called auxin, as well as abscisic acid. So these are chemicals. There's chemicals out there that we can't smell. And these, we can, but just way, way back in our brain. We're not really paying attention to it. It's not really that strong smell. And there are some people that are allergic to fall and actually need to leave, because the ethylene, the abscisic acid, or this auxin, it's called, it impacts with their sinuses, and they just can't manage it. So they're allergic. There are people who are allergic to fall.
All right. Claire, thank you so much. We've been talking about the changes going on in the forest. We have a lot more to talk about, including what's happening in our lakes and what's happening in the forest with mammals and their adaptations for the changing season. But we're going to take a quick break right now. You're watching White Mountains TV. Stay tuned for more with Clare Long of the White Mountain National Forest.